Hey gang, welcome back. It's DrBossKey, and I'm going to try to do this thing that I've been literally putting off for almost a year now, and that is to try to explain how we developed the end-level rank system. Very Devil May Cry-ish. This is what I consider it'll probably be a little bit of a ranty and sprawly video. It's maybe hard to follow. I'll do the best I can. I want to do this thing in one shot, as I normally do. And I can certainly help people, but I think partly this is just about giving the main pointers and sort of what you need to do in order to develop a system like this. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Okie dokie. First and foremost, this, my friends, is essentially the rank system, and excluding this guy here. So yeah, it's a lot of logic, and I'll go into what all this stuff does here in just a jiff. But maybe I should start by showing you guys this. So, okay. I highly recommend before you, because I know it's fun with Shmup Creator. It's really great because you're like, oh, I'm going to start building stuff and snapping things together and making your way. And that is fun. That is a lot of fun to have that kind of sprawl development. When you want to have a bigger system and you're trying to understand each of the pieces and how you want to roll it, I highly recommend giving yourself a little design document. So here's where we started. I want to really have a good think on what I want the rank system to do, and also to challenge my assumptions. So as I started to build the rank system, some things didn't work the way I wanted them to, or I discovered something that that I hadn't really understood in Shmup Creator, and I had to work around that. So and since we can't write our own code, the best we can do is adapt the existing systems into that. So here we have essentially the different ranks. So I maybe went a little crazy, but I was very inspired by Devil May Cry. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7 possible ranks. They're all nicely worded. So and I explain what each of these do, right? So and then I have the rank parameters. So I needed to think about what are all the things that feed into the rank system, and because our shmup has things like Loki's for your power-ups, and it has pacifist mode, I really wanted all the core gameplay systems in my game to feed the rank system. That way you were always rewarded. I mean, numbers go up, bigger rank system, ranking letters, etc., right? More expressive voice lines. So that means for us is Loki's collected. So on a per level basis, pacifist mode, whether you actually activated it, we don't check whether you complete it because you have to complete it once you've started it, even if you die. Because we don't have logic otherwise to check when when you've died during it, and to cancel it. So another limitation we have. Then we have monster trophies collected. So this is basically an enemy that spawns more enemies if you're killing all the enemies. And then we have the secret found. Every level has a secret. So I was like, oh yeah, I want to encourage people to realize what they missed, because your rank system also has the opportunity to help drive where you want players to spend their focus, right? So if you don't call out that there's a secret to be collected and the player doesn't see that they collected it, then how else would they know, right? Unless they get lucky. So we wanted to factor that in. And then we have number 5 and number 6 here, which is score check high, so just a high score, and then we wanted a score check higher. So I wanted to have 2 score checks. So quick little side note about this here is that scoring in Shmup Creator is not level specific, it's cumulative. So that also then became a factor. So if you just wanted to set up your rank system based on score, what would happen is that as the player progresses through your levels, and you're checking for score, once they die, they lose all their score. Once they hit a continue screen, they lose all of their score. So then effectively, if you only checked on high score at the end of every level, then the players would just get your poorest rank, assuming you're like, oh, you didn't achieve your higher score. So some food for thought. That's why I weighted these parameters higher for the first 4, and then I have these are a little bit more like candy. So, but this also score gates certain things, right? Like, and by the time you want to balance scoring across your game, that's a much bigger effort, because the more things you change, the more it could affect score. And when you start chasing score, you really want to have a good understanding of what your best scores are, what players' best scores are. Ideally, you're playtesting this, and then you can feed that in the system. So here are the general rank rules. So rank D is a level complete. So determined is a level completed and no rank parameters earned. So they didn't earn any of the top parameters 1 through 4, nor 5 or 6. Technically, you could. I think the logic I went with here is right. Is that if you're not doing these things, you won't be able to get a high score. Like I call them the highness score and the royal highness score, right? So, and they kind of feed each other. So, but if you're getting each of these things, you're probably then starting to rank up the higher scores. So that was kind of the thinking there. And then for rank C, 1 rank parameter earned from rank parameters 1 through 4. So again, 1 through 4. Rank B, any 2 rank parameters earned through 1 through 4. Rank A is any 3. Rank A plus is any 4 rank parameters earned, right? Rank S is all 4 rank parameters earned, and you achieved at least the high score. I just put an X for basic algebra, meaning 1 there, just when I was kind of writing out the logic. And then an S plus tier is that you've earned all 4 rank parameters, and you've achieved the high score, the royal highness score is achieved there. So. So with that, for me, I really wanted to create a rank system that rewarded achieving certain things, right? I didn't want everyone just to get determines all the time. So arguably collecting all the Lokis is pretty tough, right? You have to see them, you have to shoot them or run into them. But hitting a pacifist mode, most people do it by accident. So even if you just hit pacifist mode, you would then go from rank D to rank C. So, you would be courageous. And so, but I also, there's logic, right? So you could get pacifist mode and the secret found, but not monster trophies collected and not Lokis, right? And that would give you 2 parameters, and that any 2 rank parameters would give you a B. And you can kind of see how that goes. So there was a little bit tricky trying to figure out how to like check each of these and then create the right kind of rank, and I'll get into what that looks like, but I wanted to give you an overview. So, and then over here I have rank combination criteria. Okay, so this is the secret sauce. This kind of broke my brain for a bit, right? So now that you know what each one of these ranks, what the parameters are in order to achieve the ranks, then we basically have, okay, what are all the rank combination criteria? So for an S plus rank, all Lokis, pacifists, secret found, all monster trophies, royal highness score threshold achieved, right? So this is me. The reason why I wrote it in rules up front and then I bullet pointed it down and then I flipped it from S plus ranks down to, okay, what was this here? It's been a while since I looked at this document. Rank combinations. Okay, so yeah, how do I say this? All right, so and I'll show the visuals of the logic here in a second, but the gist of this is the important thing, right? So the problem we had is how like in programming terms it'd be like a for loop, like for each or you could do like a state machine, if and or if or. So the problem we needed to solve was how do we check for the ranks and only display the correct rank and not show the other ranks, right? And the way that I came about this was I needed to check, and I'll show you the logic for this. I needed to check for the best rank possible. And if you had achieved the best rank possible, don't check for any other ranks. So, and if you didn't achieve an S plus rank, check for an S rank, and then check for an A rank, and then check for a B rank and a C and blah, blah, blah. So in order to do that, I need to list out all the possible combinations of to achieve the ranks. So S plus is fine because we have to achieve everything. Whoops. So S rank was all Lokis, pacifist, secret mode, all monsters, trophies, and just the high score. And then the A plus ranks were all Lokis collected, pacifist mode collected, secret found, all monster trophies collected. And then here I had, because we had variables, right? Like coming back to this is why it's complicated. So you could hit the Lokis and the secret, but not get the pacifist mode, or not got monster modes, or you could pacifist monster secret and not Loki. So I came down here and I just did a poor man's. I actually wound up using ChatGPT to list out all the iterations, which was kind of fun. Instead of having to sit down and do it manually, I fed it in, double checked it, and kind of worked from there. So anyways, but if we come down for the A rank checks, right? So the possible ways to achieve A ranks are either these three, or these three, or these three, or these three. So that's all the possible ways with the parameters that we fed into the rank system that you could get an A rank. B ranks, where because you need a lot less, you only need 2. That could be these two, these two, these two, right? These two, just like we're talking about, or these two, etc. So you can kind of see the logic here. For C ranks, in order to get a C rank, you only need either Loki's, pacifist, monster, or secret found. That was it. So, and then for a D rank, you just need to finish the level. So now I had kind of all of the idea. What is this? Shit, I don't even remember what this is. So now that you have an idea, that's right. Okay. I also, when you're trying to do something complicated like UI design, I kind of put on my product owner hat, right? And I wanted to, and this, this was even before we had the DrBossKey in. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of had a visual language for how everything would look, right? So I had all the elements, I had the all the kind of mock-ups. I had temporary mock-ups until we got to the final bits. So like these obviously aren't what are in the game. Some of them are. And then what I did is, so in Canva, I basically took a screenshot of the game because you want to make sure that everything fits as you would expect. So I had that. And then I wanted the strings, of course. And then, so I could, this is your fastest way to iterate. When you sit down and do a mock-up with as close to final assets as possible, it lets you do things like understand, positioning of the, of your ranks. It lets you understand, how things could look in terms of your visual iteration, right? It also helps you understand some of the things you need to tackle. So for instance, in the rank screen, I needed to be able to show you negative versus positive. And by the way, a red check mark versus a yellow check mark was not enough. They really confused players. We wound up finally adjusting this to be an X because I found a better way to do it. But that read more like a traditional, X for you didn't do it, check mark for you completed it, right? So, and these are the kind of things you do. So then what I did is I said, cool, let me take each of the elements and each of the ranks, and I basically then exported them all as PNGs as transparency. And you can see this is kind of like, okay, cool. I did a test with each of the different ranks and very, very easy stuff here. I just kind of, you can see kind of how I wound up doing it with Canva. But I got to add treatments to the glows. I got to add drop shadow. I had additional shadows on the back, right? So you can see here the basic prototype art. And then also the last thing is that we basically have a big blue. I wanted to make sure that I muted the background and that we brought up a big kind of blue screen that has some transparency. We have this little bit of gradient here. These are the little things that kind of help sell the fact that you're in this UI layer. One of the other things that we wound up doing is in our game, because of where we started in Shmup Creator, we have things like a portal opens here and, you shoot enemies and as a result, the enemies are like dialogue choices in our game and stuff like that. So I wanted to still keep the rank system in the world. So you fly into the portal, you could still fly around and do things. And I basically, I created a few other things that kind of help sell that. But anyways, I digress. So, all right, let me stop there. Obviously there's a lot, but now you got a gist for that. So, okay. So rank system points. So we just did the overview. We looked at the design document, limitations. Okay, cool. So, yeah, conditions travel with you. Okay, so a few things right off the top. One is you're going to need pretty much all the skills that you've learned in Shmup Creator up to this point. If you're trying to make a rank system, you can. And this could be your thread to learning all these systems, but this is about the most that I could get out of it, understanding Shmup Creator as much as I do. And I still think I could have done it better, but we're not tearing this apart to do that. So, all right. So, but one of the things that is important is you probably want to create a layer specifically for containing your logic, right? So you can see I can easily turn that on and off because conversely, if you turn off everything else, you only want to be able to work and not have any additional logic somewhere that you that would confuse you, right? So you know, you can see here as I continue to add stuff back in, it's pretty much okay, kind of in the front. But yeah, so first and foremost, add a layer. The other thing that's probably super helpful to understand is that I highlight, what helped me, right, is I had to do the UI design, and the UI design should be driven by the outputs from the rank system. So there's the logic, how we're iterating through the ranks, and then the outputs from those ranks. And then after I had the logic done, then I used that to basically design or design and implement the UI system, because I want the rank system to do a bunch of things, right? So maybe I stop here real quick and I'll just show you this. Check this out. This brings us to our next thing. So here's the rank system. So you can see here that I wanted to check that all the Lokis were collected. I wanted to check for the pacifist mode, right? You can see the X's. I have the rank spinner that's kind of tabulating, right? I have the voice line, the reward for getting your rank. I have the reinforcement text, and then at the end of this, I have basically the portal that opens up, right, and all that good stuff. Oops, dang it. Let me show you one more time. Also, by the way, this is the beginning of level 1. You have to. One of your limitations is that your rank check conditions have to be awake for you to be able to kill them, like because they're basically using enemies. I'll show you that in a second. But anyways, here's the rank, right? It comes up, and then at the end of all this, I drop away the background in terms of it being the backing for all the UI elements. And then basically, I actually wound up creating these helper arrows, which are a little bit big and nasty looking. But as I dropped that away, players were confused because they were looking for traditional UI dialogues. Because of the way we design things, we had to design new solutions, right? So then I have basically the in-level portal there that triggers the end screen. So, but I want that to come up after everything else. Okay. Whew. If you're with me, great. If not, I apologize because it's a lot. Okay, so coming back to where we're at. Now that you've got a good idea of how this all looks in game, we have basically on this side, we have, and if you guys don't know this, I'm a big proponent of this. So I basically have a trigger that I set up here. These triggers are basically set to be less than, so enemy's HP is less than. It's not connected to any enemies. And then I use the text object to add basically notes, right? And I just basically make the text object either world position or it can be normal. Because if I leave it in world, then I can do things like look at different zoom levels. I can look at basically the notes, right? So okay, let me pause that for a second. Okay, drinking my coffee here. Okay, so now I'm just going to do an over-explain on what we got going on here. And that probably means I need to explore a little bit as well. So, but more importantly, so I can at least at the highest level, I can say, hey, here's where we start the logic for the iterative check for ranks, right? I also do this little thing, which I have a generic enemy here, which I actually am calling it a bool. So when I look at this, I've actually just written on the enemy texture, the true false. These are like 128s or 64s, 64. So, but you can see here I have the bool checks there. I actually kind of expand this a little bit. I'll get into that in a second. But all right, so then we have the iterative rank check, and then over here we have the rank letters. So this is the logic for that. Over here we have the iterative check for S ranks. So that would be all of this here. And I can kind of spider through that. So maybe we can take a look at this. All right, so leave that there. What's this guy up here? Okay, cool. So the other thing, maybe I was talking about this a little bit earlier, is, so I have these conditions. I definitely make sure I don't save my project. Okay, so I have these conditions, right? So, and before I get into the rank iteration, I need to show you guys what's driving that, right? So, so we have, so here, just So this is the camera, and the area outside of the yellow is the activation range. So you can wake up enemies, trigger conditions, logic wakes up if it's viewed in the area outside of the camera or the area inside the camera. So, and one of the things that is really important to know about Shmup Creator is these are enemies. You cannot kill an enemy that is not awake. So if this is down here, and I send a kill condition, then this enemy won't die, and any logic you want to have based on that enemy dying will not fire, right? So with that limitation in mind, what we needed to do is we need to put each of our rank checks. So you can see here, There we go. All right, now that you can read it. Now you can also see, like, when you get kind of to this level of complexity, this is basically visual scripting, right? This is my poor man's version. So I created enemies. These are just basically enemies here, right? That they don't have a collision. They don't need it. They need to be attached to the camera because they need to follow along. And gameplay wise, none of that stuff matters. Hide when kill was fine. I don't think there's anything else I needed to change in here that was worthwhile. Okay, so let's see. Let me do this too. I'll tell you about my test setup here in a second here. There's way too much stuff going on. All right, so we'll do this. So I just want to show you the point. So I'm basically at runtime here. You can see that I'm still doing the rank checks. Down here. All right, cool. And yeah, so you can see that basically these are just now we could actually hide these. So if you don't have a space outside your camera, you could probably just add these, and then now in the engine you have the ability to gameplay. Is it? You have basically the ability to not have enemies render in the final game. And gameplay, hide when killed. Where is it? Path direction. Okay. Oh, here it is, right in front of me. So there's this. You have a bool now that you can set, which is basically to make the enemy invisible. So you can see here now, Loki's collected, and it's not showing up there. So you have. When I built this, these things didn't exist. So you could do that as well if you need to modify it for your own side of things. But anyways, okay. So, the gist of this, so this is the data that drives the rank system, right? So now, basically, you can see here that I have some logic. So if it's the Loki's collected, there's an enemy here. So I have a trigger condition, which basically is always active, stays active. Connected, and I basically use the connected entity state is all dead. And one of the easy things to kind of show here is you can hold down the control key, and you can basically control key click each of your logic lines, right? So I don't need to show all of these, but basically it's what you would expect, right? So here is a Loki, here is a Loki, here's a Loki. So, you know, like it's all very straightforward. So now, if all of these Lokis have been killed, then what happens is we then fire the kill condition, and we basically kill the Lokis here. We kill the rank condition check, which is basically these enemies, right? So, and let me stop there and also talk about how important it is to set up essentially a test harness, right? So one of the things I recommend is at the beginning of your level, have a basically inside here, it doesn't have to be active, but you basically have a, I like to sometimes when I'm working on logic, I don't want to be scrolling through the world, but you need to check for that. But I want to be able to check or work on conditions or do stuff. Now I have basically a sandbox level because you can copy things back and forth between levels, but there are still cases where I need to change things. And for instance, verifying that the rank system is working, at least from a logic perspective. This is one of the ways I do that. So I have the camera itself. I modify the camera speed to 0. I have over here, basically, what is this? I have, man, this is a lot. Okay. So the short of it is, let me take a look. All right. So got this that feeds each of these systems. I know that starts, and then I have basically here. How about I do this? Save often, but not when you're trying to do tutorials. Otherwise, you would destroy your logic. Okay. So coming back here, let me run you through the logic. So the reason why I was going through the rank system was to show you what drives the different ranks. And then also, I have here, yeah, is it here? Okay. So the nice thing about being able to click on stuff is you can trace it through. So I basically know that this is connected to the bosses, right? So once the bosses are dead, what we do is we basically we have connectivity in states are all dead. We fire off a timer. Basically, this gives you a little bit of time for the boss to die and for the collection bits to happen, all the good stuff to allow for time bonus, blah blah blah. And then what happens is that this then triggers the start of the rank system. And in order to debug the rank system, I then know, so I know that that's where that comes from, right? And then we have another timer here. I often like to use a lot of timers, at least set by 0.1 seconds, in order to step through logic, right? But also sometimes when you're talking about visuals or a sequence of things needing to happen, you need to be able to adjust the time in which those things happen. One, being able to turn down the time so you can iterate faster, but also then to adjust the time to allow the whole sequence to flow as you would expect. So I come in here and I know that I don't need that. I delete this connection temporarily. And then I have essentially my countdown timer. So after 4 seconds, essentially these things start to happen. So I bring up the blue background image, right? Let me see here. So the UI display logic, right? So, but before I go into that, I just want to show you what we're doing there. So I basically take this, put this up here in the camera view because I'm basically using it to debug, right? And then what I do is I come up here and I turn off the camera so the camera isn't moving, although technically it could, but it's just easier for me. And then essentially this gives me the ability to look at the rank screen, right? We don't need to look at this again. But also, what's important is, let me see here. I can do, I don't need to show you all of these, but I can do this basically also. I can set up a gameplay volume, right? Again, when you're building this, you want to have a method to debug, right? So player goes into the zone, stick that right there. Sometimes I like to just do one of these. That way the player just has to come through the threshold, right? And then you can basically connect that down here. I think, does that work? Let's find out. So if you press the spacebar, you can actually debug. Yeah, I don't think that, no, that doesn't work. So you have to do it this way. Which is, we'll just copy this enemy death trigger, and then you can do something like that, I think. Ooh, do not save. I'm so used to saving. All right, so there, you can see what happened is that I basically killed the tracking enemy, the bool state enemy for Loki's collected. I can do the same thing for this. So this gives you the ability to debug test. You want to kind of think about it. You don't want to do the thing the whole time in order to make that happen, right? So, and actually, let me do this. All right. So now I have achieved 3 of the main rank conditions. You can see that the check marks change, right? So I got the logic for that. I'll walk you through all that in a second here. But I just wanted to make sure that the point to understand here is you need to leave yourself enough breadcrumbs to debug your way back into the system, because you're probably going to need to fix things, especially if it's brand new. But also when you copy the system between levels, you should have this like in a sandbox, then it's just about hooking up the logic points from the level, the data, like the enemies, the things that you need to achieve, to the system itself. So having proxy conditions helps with that. Okay, so I'll get rid of that stuff. Bring this back. So now you know what that is. Okay, so that's the data part of that. And before I get into the UI, let me put back over here. So, all right. What do we got here? Okay, so we have a chunk of logic here, which is, it's called the level complete. So this is also just an enemy, just like we would do before. And I have a trigger condition here. Things are a little messy, of course. Okay. All right. So I have a trigger condition here, which is, what is this? How the hell does this work? Let's see. Okay, we got this. Got this. Okay. So, all right. Okay. Okay. Let's get rid of that. Okay. All right. So basically what I have here is tracing this back over. Okay. So when the boss is killed across the level, it basically feeds into this countdown timer. This countdown timer feeds into another countdown timer, which I set at 13 seconds. I did this in order to get the right kind of flavor of how things progress. And I think, yeah, because that triggers, because some of the UI I want to have happen, and then I want to do the rank checks. So I started the UI with like the little sci-fi dial, like the tabulating, the now thinking side of things, right? The count up process. So that's what that represents. And then over here, I have basically the enemy, which then after that timer fires, I basically then kill this enemy. I have a trigger attached to that enemy, which is then connected entity state is all dead. So when it is dead, wait a minute, sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so when this enemy dies, it triggers this, and then that comes down to here. And we do a couple things based on this. One is we have, all right, let's check this one first. So we have basically a trigger. So this one had to be a reverse check, because once, yeah, okay. My brain. Okay. So the all alive check, right? So what I am checking against is, what is this? All right. So we hit the level complete. Okay. So then we do this thing where when we're checking for the rank logic, we have all enemies are alive. And so if you come down here, I basically have, I used visual reference for me. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think these are, yeah, these were just, because I had them already. I was like, I don't need to modify them. So they're easier to look at. And then what I have here is I have essentially, when okay, so that's what we've got going on. All right, so each of these trigger conditions feed up from these checks, right? So if it then checks for these, it says, hey, are any of these dead? If they are dead, all enemies are dead, then it does a thing where it says, cool, like the, what is this? Yeah, it says cool. So the data. So when all the Lokis are collected in the level, this proxy gets killed, and then it comes down here and it says, hey, that global data check then should trigger a couple things. So one is it triggers the Loki here. I don't want to get too much in the visual side of things, but more importantly, it then it destroys the Loki's collected enemy and the Loki's collected enemy, for instance, in this case. And the reason why I had to have separate, I might have been able to remove one logic step here, but I need to be able to check before I continued. So that's why I wound up creating multiples, but you get the sense for it. So, and so what happens is I come back in here to connected to state is all alive. And then I have a couple conditions here. So like, for instance, so is it true that the Loki has been killed? And if so, we come into here and we go, cool, we're actually checking that the connected entity state is alive. And so if the entity state is alive, same thing here. And let me explode this logic here. So here we have the rank letter checking in logic, right? So, and what happens is, geez, it's a rat's nest. Okay, so we check on that condition. We double check that if the enemy is alive, we actually kick off this logic. If the enemy is dead, then let me see here. So level complete. So level complete feeds into this, and that if the level is complete, by the way, grabbing your object and moving it around helps you visually debug where you have connection points, because we don't have the ability to nest stuff. And so when your logic gets complex, sometimes just being able to see where it's connected is quite helpful. Also, you can, again, click a couple of your cables and you can actually then better. Oh, by the way, if you're holding the left mouse button down and you use the middle mouse button, you can actually keep grabbing your entity and moving the camera around. So anyways, but coming back to where we're at, give me a sec. I need to unpack this so I can explain it. Okay, and we're back. Man, mind bender. Okay, so basically what we have, right, is this is the way that this is the way the system works, right? So as we come into here and we have this condition where we're checking for each of these states of the enemies and whether they were achieved. If they have been achieved, then we continue on with checking our logic, right? So if they're all alive, because basically the short of this is what we needed to do is, this is how we iterate through, right? So if you achieve the highest rank possible, we don't need to check any other layers. But if you haven't achieved the highest rank possible, we check the next level of rank possible, and then the next one, the next one, the next one. And if you didn't achieve any of the criteria for the ranks, and the criteria again being the states of Loki's, Monster Rovi's, Pacifist, high score, etc., then we wanted to come back down and iterate through until we got to the end of the iterative rank check, right? So, and what I wound up doing up here is I kind of I grouped the logic together. So I have the S ranks. 2 of them are possible here, and and so what happens here is we go, cool, is did we achieve this rank? And maybe I'll break this out for you to see this. So and if the answer is yes, then we don't need to continue, right? So this is our essentially our, what is this? This is our iteration loop. Is it here? Check a look. So one other little thing, if you get kind of complex like this, you can do stuff like run this in preview mode in the editor. I just turned off the appearance of the blue background so I could watch this. So you can kind of, you can click outside the editor if you have a second monitor. You can already see like, oh, here's some of the visual logic as I was explaining, right? And so I'm iterating through the visual logic on whether or not you achieved the each of the rank criteria. And I'll talk about the visual stuff in a second because the logic side is much harder to grok. But then you can click back into the editor and you can kind of see like, oh, hey, here, here's the spinner. Here's still the iteration because this stuff all takes time. I could make it all appear instantly, right? But I wanted to have it like have a little bit of a build up and not be too long. And then we'll click back in. And then we're about ready to, oh, here we go. So I can see up here, this is now, now that we've iterated through the UI bits, the presentation side, the last thing to do is display the rank. And at that point, because I'm checking against the visual states, I know whether or not the visual states were achieved. That's what these guys are here, right? These are basically reinforced bool states for checking against the rank parameters. Oof. And then so I know here that this is going to kick off up here. This comes into our first rank check, which is the all alive. And then if I see this correctly, too bad we can't actually pause and look through, but you can see here each of these logic checks are saying, hey, I've checked, and I'll get into this in a second. So the way we have to do it is that if they're all alive, if one of them is dead, then we bail out. But we're checking against each of the enemy states as we check, because when the S+ tier rank is true, we've killed these states. So then we iterate through that, and we say, cool, like we found the one we're looking for. We don't need to continue. So and what that looks like down here, maybe it's easier to see at the bottom. All right, so we have our iterative rank check D. So we have our logic here, which is the all alive, as we've talked about. We have the bool condition, whether or not rank D is true. And we have a all alive. So if rank D is true, yeah, all alive. So if this guy is not alive, technically, if this guy is not alive, then we continue forward. So we do a couple things. This is what we do. So one is, I bet you. So if this guy is not alive, then we will say, cool. Then what we do is we actually kill each of these criteria. These are the checks, right? If these are true or false, whether or not the parameters for the rank system have been earned. And then we do the same thing. So that's the salient point here, right? So when we're checking for rank C, we do the same thing where we go, cool, here are each of the parameters, right? We need to check each one of them because any one of them can be true. So these are all bool states. And if any of them are true, then we trigger this logic, which then does the same thing, which then kills all of the remaining parameter checks. And anytime any of the remaining parameter checks are checked, then what happens is, I think it's this guy here. Let me take a look. It's easier to see at the bottom. Okay, so got this, got this guy. Okay, cool. So then what happens is we have essentially this series of counters, right? This is the important part here. All right, cool. So then we have basically, we have these counters. So once the sequence, we've killed the boss, we've signaled that the level's complete and that we want to do the rank system. All the UI bits are done at that point, and then we come over here and we essentially have a trigger, which then does two things. One is it feeds into this trigger condition, which then checks to see if all these are alive. If they are all alive, continue. If they are all dead, do not continue. And so what happens is that then triggers the whether it's alive or dead bool check here. And that bool check is then, again, if it's alive, then we continue. If it's dead, we stop. And then basically that does a few things here. one is like this control, because I think, did I have text here? I think I have the text here. Let me see. Oh, so we have that text there. Just taking a look to see if, yeah. So I mean, I've even in my design, I think when I wanted to be experimenting, I wound up with a couple things on my side too. So I am actually controlling the appearance of the rank as part of this logic here. So so you can see that happens. And then I am actually adding the title for the rank. So the rank logic itself, we play the voice line, supreme being. We have another audio cue for the letter landing. We have the swoosh for the letter coming up, and then we have a camera shake. Yay, camera shake! And I think that's it. Yeah, so that's the core of this logic. So so world data. Have I collected all the things I want? World data feeds into your rank checks, and what you need is, if your world states, your world data is true, then you want to essentially have a bool enemy that checks. Maybe, like I said, I could have not had this abstracted out one layer, but I needed to. Maybe there was a reason for it. Maybe I could have done it more efficiently, but you know, that's development. Sometimes you don't always end exactly where you thought you were going to begin, unless you decide to throw it all away and write it again. And I'm definitely not doing that here. So, but then you have the bool state checks for each of the rank parameters, and then we check against those rank parameters here, and then we basically start to do basically an iteration loop, right? So we go, cool, come down here, check the whether we had an S plus or an S plus tier rank. If the enemy is alive, we don't. So then we move on to the next thing. We come down here, we check, was it an S rank? Is it alive? And if it's alive, because we only kill it when it's true, then continue. And then the moment one of these is killed, because the parameters were achieved, we kill it. And so we know which line of logic we'd be on in order to display the correct rank. Oh yeah, you can see here, like A plus rank, I just put a note in for myself, like this is what all these needed to be. And then we bail out. We don't check against anything else. Whew. Okay. Holy shit. All right. So now you have that. Then let's take a look at the UI. All right. So the other piece of this is over here. We have the boss is defeated. We're going to start the end rank logic. So again, you saw that trigger across the map. That actually would feed into this normally. So that's the condition here, but because we're debugging, I've disabled that and I put the check up here. Normally would be this. And this is why sometimes having more than one timer even just helps you separate your logic, right? Which is kind of quite useful. So, and it's good to like note where your debug bits are. So then what happens here is, I'm probably gonna just show this. Take a look. So here that becomes true. It comes down and feeds into turning on essentially the blue background, which by the way is, so this is the blue background. I've set the timer right now, duration to 1 second, but it was 20, but it makes it harder to see all the logic bits when you've done that. So I just have it come up right now and flash away. And then let's see what happens here. So we display the rank text off of that. Then we come down to the next chunk of logic, which then comes into here, which is then displays, because we display the blue background, want it to come up first and then to have text appear. So that's why we have the rank system duration, like half a second here. That is unhooked for now. And then let's see. So what I wound up doing, because it's basically the same chunks of logic, I have I have the full screen UI. I have the UI display logic, which kind of starts all the way over here from the left and then moves to the right. I have the portal display and level load logic. So the portal comes up at the end, and there's some criteria bits that they need to be aware of, right? Like I don't need to go deeply into that. We are using, as you can tell here, right? We're basically using a lot of text objects because text objects give you a few things. One is that blue background that we use gives you nice backing, but anything that you use to render with a text object will render above everything else in the game. So you can't use a text object to display something and have it render behind game objects. So this is very much like your UI layer, right? So, and that UI is always on top of everything. Now you can adjust the order of things, and you should with UI, which you can do here in terms of rendering order. So you can set up a manual rendering order, and then you can set the order. So become used to dealing with that, because you want to make sure, like, for instance, text doesn't show up behind the blue background, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, and full screen UI we talked about, and then we start to come down through here and we go, cool. So let's see real quick. So rank icons. So with the rank icons, as you can see here, we have the logic. We go, cool. What is this? So this is a picture type, system, Loki, UI. Okay, cool. Oh, also a nice little, gosh dang it. 1 second. Shouldn't have a bunch of buds on popping up with text right now. I think that's underneath me, but still. Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah, rank icons. Yeah, so we come down through here. We have the rank swoosh, which is basically after a delay. And then we have, okay, cool. Oh, that's right. So, oh, that was the point I was going to make. So the other thing that's going to save you a lot of pain and hardship if you're going to implement this manually, which you have to across all the levels, is when you're dealing with UI, it's better, in my opinion, to use your text object, because again, UI, and then it's animated, so we loop, but it's to, what is this? Stay active, duration, loop. Is not to check world position. So you can set your coordinates of where these things should show up, and you have to basically, I did another video a little bit on kind of doing mockups and kind of aligning things, but this will ensure that when you copy your logic around, you don't have to like try to arrange it. While it might be a lot more comfortable to put your rank logic bits like at a specific point in terms of setting up your world position versus a manual position, right? So, and in this case, these are just, these are helpers, right? Was that right? World position. Oh yeah. So yeah. So when it's not checked, it's a global position. When it is checked, it's world position, meaning that it's, meaning that you can see the Loki here. So then if I move this around, you can see it's offset from the object itself. So it just becomes a lot more messy in that particular case. I really got to make sure I don't save anything. Okay. Little tip for there. So yeah, so then basically what happens is this is the UI logic. So then we display the Loki bit, and then we display the text, all Loki's collected. And what else is this? And this is the logic that handles the check marks, right? So I got the check marks here. You can see the check mark here and the check mark there. And probably one of the other things that is useful to know is that if you set it to switch mode, you can, so what we do is here, we check whether or not the connected entity state is alive. So is it alive? If so, then what's this? If so, then we're going to display a negative check mark, right? Pardon me, coffee. Then if, let's see here, here's the other logic. Connected enemy states alive. And also grouped with this. So then what do we check here? Yeah, okay. And then if the entity's connected state is, yeah, because it was, yeah. So if it's not alive, which is good, then we then give you the check mark, right? Again, it's checking against the data state, right? So have all the Lokis been collected? If they have, then we do these two things, right? Like one is it only appears as a negative if they're alive. if it's dead, and you couldn't do it the other way. I think I ran into an issue where, again, when things are alive, you can check against them, and that can give you a particular type of bool check. But if you check to see if it's dead and you had to kill it, there's one issue with logic in there that happens where, again, you can't kill a thing that's already killed or not activated. And so I needed to check whether it is like, hey, it's alive. And then if it is alive, which meant that you didn't complete all of the rank criteria for collecting the Lokis, then we give you the negative check mark. And if it's subsequently, if they aren't alive because you achieve the condition, then we give the check mark. So that was a little bit of a tricky logic state for determining whether to show you the check mark or the negative. So, and then all we do is we basically, you can see here these groups, right, of iterations. And this is each of the rank criteria. And then coming down here, for instance, here's the secret collected, right? Again, secret collected. We do the same exact logic. And then down here we have the high score checks. So also here, is it here? Score, yeah, okay. So what we do here is it's probably nothing crazy spectacular. Let's take a look. Okay, so we're down here. That's good. We're down here. Ha. Okay, cool. Oh, no, that's not right. Where did you go? The rat's nest. Ah, okay. So here it is the way we check whether or not you've hit a high score or a royal high score. Yeah, so all it is so if you get a high score, we basically score more than, we set the number, and then the second level of high score is then a different number, right? And then we basically, these guys are running, the logic is open, and I set it to stay active. And then if any of these conditions are true, we do what you would do normally. So we have the fake enemy, right? And if we kill the enemy, let's see, because that's true, kill it, then we have the logic that then will appear based on that. So in two places, one is that condition becomes true. So connected to the enemy states all alive, which is not the case. And so we're here. Also, down here, we have at the final check on the Royal Highness score, we have essentially a timer that comes over, and this is a compound condition, so it needs to be set to switch mode, meaning that it takes two criteria to be able to complete. So one is the connected enemy state is all alive, which we showed, and then the other one is just the timer. So if both those things are true, then you didn't achieve it. And if they are not, which is down here, I think it's here. Yeah, so it's here. So we have this enemy state here. Yeah, okay. And so what we do is we actually check against, that's why I kind of have this visual proxy here. Yeah, so we check against the state here, which gets fed in here. So we have two pieces here. So one is the score check for the bool. The other one is the enemy itself. And we're checking, are they dead? If both of these are dead, then we go, cool. The condition is you've actually achieved it. And then we go from there. So you can kind of see it's a little crazy, but you kind of get the gist of it. So what I needed to do in Shmup Creator, right, like was this was way more complex than perhaps your conditions would be. Like maybe your conditions are like, hey, did you kill all the enemies on the level? And there you have a sense where it's like, okay, cool. Like then if that's the case, you would have essentially this setup. You'd have the proxy data, right? And then again, it comes down to this bit of logic here, which I know can be a little daunting. But my advice to you is check your states first, right? Like, is the condition true? Think about everything has to be set for the most part to switch mode, right? Like that's important. Let me see here. Is that true? No, stay as activated. Nope, I am completely wrong about that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then, to basically sum it up, if I can, because I know this is a crazy ramble. And actually, let me double check. So did we achieve? Oh, we achieve everything we wanted to achieve. The heck. Okay. So we talked about the layer debug method. Yep. Plug in game factors after logic is tested. Yep. That concept is like, hey, get all you build it in a test level, and then you can copy it over. UA and logic separation. We mostly talked about that. It's a little bit different for me. And then, yeah, you need to have a good working knowledge of the text objects, the layers, trigger logic, and the player controller. So these are all things that you need to do in order to handle your rank check sequence, blah, blah, blah. And then we talked about the rank check logic, which broke my brain. We have the visual logic driven from rank check. And then, yeah, so, and then the small thing here is, I kind of mentioned this, but I created proxy enemies even to be able to look at what was going on, right? So it was super helpful to be like, to look at this and go, oh, it's not just a bool enemy. Like, it's not generic enough, right? So this was very specifically checking whether or not all the Lokis have been collected. And if they were, then either leave this thing alive or kill it, and then check logic based on that. Okay. So yeah, so then one more time. So if you want to set up a rank system, one of the things you absolutely need to do is you need to have some way of checking whether your ranks are complete. And that some way can just be an enemy that is killed when other enemies are killed, or a score is achieved, whatever it may be. These need to be in your camera wake zone, because if they're not awake, you can't iterate logic. That also means, and this will trick you, that if you start here, then these guys never woke up. And if they've never woken up, then your rank system will not be able to check. So you might feel like you've created more, like you have bugs. So just keep in mind that if you want to track conditions of something across your whole level, this is one way of doing it. Now, you possibly could get away with, with the trigger condition. There is, like, again, if it's just like connectivity states are all dead, you could probably just connect all of these to all of your entities in the level, and that would fire. But again, I think the trick for you is going to be the same thing with me that I need to do, right? Is if you want to have more than one rank, then you need to check for your best ranks first, and then you need to then bail out if that best rank has been achieved. So you don't then display, like, if you want to do letters, if you want to do numbers, text, whatever you want to do, right? So, and yeah, I think that was the gist of it. Holy shit. Mad Science, I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, I'll try my best to answer them. Thank you, everyone that's been watching and asking questions. And, it's really cool to be able to share some of this, like, crazy complex stuff that I've been trying to figure out with the engine. And there's a lot of wonderful things to it. And I wanted to have been able to do it without, Hulu Studios and, the community really, like, cheering each other on and just being part of this thing. So thank you very much. See you next time.